Good evening and welcome to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA players, legends, and top instructors go to share their insights and playing lessons. Join Chris every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time as he talks with the greats of the game. Tonight's show is sponsored by the French Lick Resort, Ben Hogan Golf, the PGA Tour Superstore, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat, TaylorMade Golf, the Bobby Jones Apparel Company, and Super Speed Golf. Now here's your host, Chris Mascaro.
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining me tonight here on Next on the Tee. I am your host, Chris Mascaro, and I can't thank you guys enough for making us a part of your golfing life again this week. Tonight, I'm looking forward to sharing some really great guests with you. My first one is going to be PGA Tour's rules official, Stephen Cox, and I'm excited to have Stephen as part of the show again tonight. And as a rules official, no one knows more about what goes on inside the ropes and the setup of each event than Stephen and his peers do. I'm going to get his thoughts this week on some of the rules changes that we're looking forward to that will come into effect in January. Plus, with the PGA Tour national headquarters being at Ponte Vedra Beach in Florida, Stephen has been heavily involved with the setup of the Players' Championship and what they've done to the course as a result of the hurricane that went through there last year. So we're going to talk about that and the event moving back from May to March. So what impact could that have on the tournament and the course, itself? So looking forward to having Stephen as part of the show. He'll join me here in just a few minutes. Following him, I'm going to get a return visit from 8-time women's Canadian long drive champion, Lisa Longball Vlooswyk. Of course, we'll get with Lisa. We'll learn about how we can get a little more distance off the tee. What are some tips she can give to us? Also want to hear from her when she's playing in a Pro-Am or out in a corporate outing that she's doing, and she gets paired with, a threesome of men, right, when they're out on the golf course. Do they marvel at how far she can hit the ball and just, kind of soak that in? Or do their egos get in the way and are they trying to muscle up and try to outdrive her or at least keep up with her? I think I know what the answer is, but we'll hear what Lisa has to say when she joins me a little bit later on in this half hour. Then I'm hoping to get a visit and round out tonight's show with world-renowned golf club designer Jesse Ortiz. I reached out to Jesse to see if he could jump on and join me tonight. He's going to try to make that happen. You remember Jesse for the great work that he did with Orlamar, which was a family-owned business, his family-owned business, and the great work he did with their low-profile tri-metal fairway woods. After that, he jumped over to Bobby Jones and the Bobby Jones Golf Equipment Company, designing fairway woods and hybrids for them, which, oh, by the way, I happen to use. So I'm looking forward to talking about the designs he did for both of those companies and have him with me about 45 minutes from now. So a lot more great stories and information coming your way tonight on this edition of Next on the Tee. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and taking the journey with me over the next hour. But before we get started, I want to remind you about our good friend Matthew Lawrence and his show Backspin Golf, which airs Sunday mornings from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. It's my regular Sunday morning, 8:03 a.m. tee time. It's broadcast on WLXG ESPN Radio AM 1300 up in Lexington, Kentucky. You can stream it live by going online to WLXG.com or do what I did, download the WLXG app on your smartphone. Matthew does an outstanding job, and it's a great way to start your Sunday mornings. His equally fantastic twin brother Mitchell also has a great golf show that marries golf and travel. It's called Talking Golf Getaways, which you can find online at Golf News Net or over on Audio Boom, or really just anywhere you consume your podcast. He and his co-host Darren Bunch, they travel all over the world and let you know about great places to play, stay, and even eat while you're there. Again, it's called Talking Golf Getaways, and you can stream it at golfnewsnet.com or over on Audio Boom. And folks, as you know, we are sponsored by the French Lick Resort. Let's hear a word from Steve Rondinero about the great things they've got going on up there.
Play legendary golf at French Lick Resort, the only place in the country where you can play courses by two Hall of Fame designers on the same property. Our Pete Dye and Donald Ross courses offer two very different challenges. Experience them both and save with our Hall of Fame package. Our two historic hotels are unique as well. Cap it off with a fun visit to the French Lick Casino. Check us out online at FrenchLick.com. Bring a group and save even more. Play legendary golf this season at French Lick Resort.
Yeah, folks, be sure to go online to FrenchLick.com to see for yourself what a wonderful place it is and to book your stay as well. I also want to give a shout out to our friends at the Ben Hogan Golf Equipment Company. And folks, if you haven't hit Ben Hogan irons since the 80s or 90s. Go get yourself a demo iron of either their Fort Worth, PTX, or new Edge irons, and go out on the range and compare them to what you have. All Ben Hogan irons and wedges are handcrafted one at a time at their Fort Worth, Texas factory. No mass production, no shortcuts. Now you can order custom-made irons, wedges, and hybrids at benhogangolf.com, and they're going to build them to your specifications, and best of all, charge you a fraction of the typical retail price. Check out their complete line again of forged irons, wedges, utility irons, hybrids, bags, and accessories by going online to benhogangolf.com. We're also proud to be partnering with Russ Holden and the wonderful folks over at Caddy for a Cure. And one of the most unique opportunities in the world of professional golf is available to you through Caddy for a Cure. Spend a day inside the ropes with one of the world's best players as their caddy, and it's a fantastic way to have the time of your life while you're supporting our wounded service members and Fanconi anemia. You're going to get to walk side by side with your tour player experiencing professional golf as an insider. And in addition to the amazing experience you're going to have, you're going to get a fantastic gift package from Caddy for a Cure, which includes Under Armour logoed apparel and an eyewear package, a tour-grade caddy bib suitable for autographs and framing, a tin cup ball marking gift, chef's cut real jerky, and professional photographs of your day. They've got spots open right now that you can bid on to caddy for Rory McIlroy, Brooks Koepka, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, Justin Rose, and several others. Go online to Caddy for a Cure. That's CADDYFORACURE, caddyforacure.com to learn more. All right, now back with me on the French Lick Resort guest line is PGA Tour rules official Stephen Cox. Stephen has been a rules official since 1998. He had an accomplished amateur career over in the UK, including captaining the Great Britain team to a bronze medal in the 1996 World Student Championship and winning the Lincolnshire Open as an amateur. And I'm excited that he is back with me tonight here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Stephen, thanks for coming back on the show.
Chris, it's my absolute pleasure. Calling you from Philadelphia, of all places, getting ready for next week's BMW Championship. So I'm excited to be back on the show.
Well, I appreciate that very much. So talk about that. As I was talking at the top of the show, you guys, you and your peers with the rules officials are there inside the ropes. You're helping with course layout and setup, things of that nature. Talk about what you're doing up there in Philly right now.
Yeah, so traditionally at a tour event, someone like myself will be on site 1 week prior to the tour event, getting things ready. Now, Aronimink is the facility that we're at this year for the BMW Championship, and I've probably made, since we knew that we were coming here, I would say probably 2 or 3 visits per year to work with the WGA and Aronimink Golf Club to ensure that everything is in order when I turn up this week. That obviously it takes an enormous amount of time and planning to build the size of structures that are built in these modern day sporting events. They don't just go up overnight. You can't just build them in a week. The permitting, etc., that takes place to get these huge amounts of structures, road closures, etc., takes a huge amount of planning from everybody. And so I'd make 2 or 3 visits a year, and as we move closer, we're sort of putting the fine tuning on everything from structure placement to the agronomics of the golf course, for example. In terms of rough heights, you can't just grow rough overnight. It's not as if we just turn up a week prior and say, okay, we want the rough at 4 inches or we want it at 2 inches. These things need to be thought out in advance. So, and then this week for me, it's just a case of just fine tuning, really. Here in Philadelphia, we're experiencing some unseasonably high temperatures, so we're sort of trying to manage that a little bit. It's up in the 100 degrees mark, which is not exactly ideal for grass at this time of year. So John Goslin and his team are doing an outstanding job in just sort of babying the grasses through before we start drying them down and getting the grasses to what we would regard to tournament heights and tournament speeds for our putting surfaces. But thankfully, I work with the WGA. And they're a very accomplished organization and have been doing this for many years, running the Western Open. And so I don't have too many issues to face. And we have a wonderful sponsor in BMW as well, who we're used to staging international events. So we're very fortunate on that front.
And Stephen, to your point a moment ago about temperatures, when Mother Nature isn't cooperating in any number of different directions, right? Whether it's you're getting too much rain, you're not getting enough rain, or the temperatures are what you're experiencing at such a high degree. What can you guys do? I mean, where do you go for that kind of thing to make sure that the playing conditions are the way that the tournament wants them? They're not too soft, and so the greens are really spongy, or you're not in danger when you're trying to slow these things down that, like we've seen in some events, particularly at the U.S. Open, sometimes some of these greens can get away from you. How do you prevent that kind of thing and stay on top of course conditions so they play the way you want them to?
Well, it's difficult. Whenever Mother Nature throws her hat in the ring, it does present us with challenges. But fortunately, technology has advanced over the years to allow us to really try and combat as much of this as possible. And modern day drainage in terms of green construction has allowed us to allow us to still retain relatively firm and fast greens should we get large amounts of rainfall. I'm sure you've heard the word sub-air system thrown around during the golf course broadcasts, where it allows us to essentially suck the moisture out of the greens and retain our optimum green moisture. Green probes nowadays are very prevalent throughout the agronomic world, certainly in tournament golf, to ensure that large green complexes, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 square foot greens, we have consistency across all of the green, and as opposed to just running a sprinkler head around the green complex and watering all of the green, we now can really particularly if we have a drought, dial in exactly what part of the green is retaining moisture and maybe doesn't need too much water, as opposed to the high spots which are drying out. And then we can really hand pick and be very finite about the way we irrigate our playing surfaces. And as a result, the consistency that you see week to week on the tour is usually exceptional. And not only are the clubs that we're working with, that those personnel are fantastic, we also have a full-time tour agronomist who travels. We're fortunate that someone like me, from a rules perspective, we have someone from the agronomy side who travels with myself, and it's a very much a partnership between ourselves and the club, and we're very fortunate to have that wealth of experience week to week to ensure that our playing surfaces are what our players want them to be. So it's really moved on over the last 10 or 15 years into the product that it is today, and I suspect the way certainly technology is advancing, we're only going to get more knowledgeable, and different products are going to come onto the marketplace. Back 15, 20 years ago, if you ran the irrigation, you ran it to the entire golf course. Now you can actually not just green complex, but you can just do fairways if you wish, or just do the rough. And if you want firm and fast fairways, but you want the rough to grow, then you can really section off certain parts of the golf course, which is something that we've ordinarily didn't have available to us. So it's not ideal, Mother Nature, but it's something that we're an outside sport and something that we've got to live with.
Stephen, you also mentioned structure placement. Do you ever come back to an event, getting close to when the event is actually going to, start to tee off and that sort of thing, and find that a sponsor or somebody put a structure where you guys said, no, you can't have a structure, you guys need to hurry up and get that thing down?
Were you out with me today? It wasn't a sponsor. It wasn't a sponsor hospitality. It was actually a TV tower, and that we'd unfortunately had one sited in the wrong place, and it would have caused me a little bit of a headache. So when I was driving around this morning, first time I'd been on site, I stumbled across it, and I was like, uh-oh. And fortunately, the contractor who we work with, we're very familiar with them. We work with them every week, and they are, in production, who we've got this week are terrific. And, I made a quick call to MDC, and obviously they're a very, very strong partner of ours, along with CBS and the Golf Channel. And it's not common that this happens, but all I'm saying is that's why I'm here. I'm here to foresee situations which we don't want to occur during tournament play. So, obviously we've got to accept that these structures are on the golf course, and there are balls which are going to be in and around them. But, our job is to try and limit that as much as we can, and if necessary, we're going to have to make the decision to move one, and I did that today, much to the displeasure of the guys who had to take it down and put it somewhere else. So, but it does happen, unfortunately.
And Stephen, I know you're intimately involved in what goes on for the Players Championship and the course there at TPC Sawgrass, and last year Hurricane Irma did a number on the Jacksonville area, including some pretty extensive damage to the golf course. I know you guys were working around the clock to get that golf course, into playing conditions and to meet the, the specifications that we're all used to watching at the Players Championship, including having to have some holes redesigned. So wanted to get your thoughts. How do you feel about how the course turned out and how the championship played this year?
I think all in all, we were absolutely thrilled with how it all played out, given the turmoil that we went through in September, October, and the cleanup that a lot of the East Coast faced, and we worked with a wonderful bunch down there, and it was we had to just look at it from a different angle, and we realized that actually in many ways it created us an opportunity to do things ordinarily we wouldn't have wanted to do, because there was such large amounts of tree damage and ordinary big established trees that we'd never have touched. And so once we'd got over the initial shock of how many trees we'd lost, and certainly out back of 12 and 13, it allowed us to potentially move in a different area or a different direction. So we sort of put a positive spin on it. But we're still suffering a little bit in terms of the effect of the last two hurricanes, really. I mean, it's a very much a tree-lined golf course, Chris, and the number of trees, which are probably approaching about 1,000 trees now over the last 2 or 3 years, that combined with having enormous problems with beetle damage in North Florida and South Georgia, which is attacking the pine trees, which are obviously very native to golf courses like Sawgrass and TPC Sawgrass. So we're having to sort of rethink a little bit, because holes which you traditionally see on TV rely on trees, which are part of the strategic nature of that particular golf hole. And when you're in threat of losing those, then the integrity of the golf hole tends to go away. So, we are working through that right now in terms of trying to protect our forestry for not just the next 5 or 10 years, but for the next 100 years. But of course, trees don't grow very quickly, so it's a difficult ask. But in answer to your question, all in all, we were thrilled with the championship, and I mean, look, the great thing about that particular golf course is that it doesn't favour any one type of player. It's not a long golf course. It's not a short golf course. You have to drive the ball well. If you do so, then you're going to put yourself in a position where you can score. And of course, we saw that with Webb Simpson. I mean, he drove the ball exceptionally well. He's not one of the longest hitters on the tour, but the way he drove the ball and put his ball in play, then he gave himself the opportunity to score, and the greens were fantastic. And he took advantage of that. Now, if you drive it crooked around there, it's going to be difficult. And some guys who try to force the issue, they're the ones who either missed the cut or didn't feature too well. So, but all in all, with what we've been through over the last 6 to 8 months, I think we were all delighted.
And Stephen, with the shift to having the event next year in mid-March, are you nervous at all? If we had maybe a colder than normal winter, that it could impact the course conditions?
So I think here's the deal. So we were in May, and our prominent grass was Bermuda. And that was always one of our issues, is that we have a very, very short growing window to grow Bermuda grass in North Florida, because, Bermuda grass, it needs temperatures in the 80s, 80s plus to really stimulate and grow. Well, our greens were always very, very just struggling to come out of dormancy, because it didn't really get that hot until, maybe March time. So we were always up against it. Now it offers us the opportunity to move to cool season grasses. So in the past, where we haven't overseeded, we've played a blanket Bermuda greens Bermuda fairways, Bermuda tees. Now, because of the cool weather date, it allows us to overseed the golf course. So when I say that, is that we're now going to go with a ryegrass, which is that emerald green that when you turn on your television screens in April and you turn on an Augusta, that is the emerald green is the overseed. Now, if you were to turn on your TV screens at Augusta in August, you'd see Bermuda grass, because that would have just dominated and the ryegrass would have died off. So the look and the play of the golf course at Sawgrass for the Players' Championship in March is going to be totally different. The visuals will be different. Bermuda grass, for me, is never a particularly attractive grass. You got a lot of, mutation and stuff. It's difficult to make it look pretty, and the rough. Not that we necessarily wanted huge amounts of rough, but it was a very sparse 2.5 inches of Bermuda, and didn't really challenge the players too much. Now we're moving into cool weather grasses. We can have as much or little as rough as we want. We're very much in control of our own destiny. I think the other thing is that, in May we can have, unseasoned, again, very warm weather. And so, what we've found is that a lot of spectators will come out there and it get to the heat of the day, and then they'll just retire to to either the hospitality areas, or for that matter, just return either home or to their hotels and watch the conclusions on the television. Whereas in March, with the lower temperatures, that will be a far more conducive environment to being able to watch tournament golf. Hopefully it's not going to be 85 or 90 degrees as we've somewhat experienced in May. So it's going to be a totally different feel. Yes, we run the risk of it possibly being a little bit, windy and get the odd squall come through that you just get in March. But fingers crossed, hopefully those are few and far between. And I think that golf course needs a little bit of wind anyway, quite frankly. So I'm genuinely looking forward to it. I really am.
Stephen, switching gears a little bit with respect to rulings that you've had to deal with so far this season. What are some of the situations that have given you guys some trouble or left you shaking your heads regarding some rulings you had to administer out on the golf course?
Well, that's a perfect lead into the new rules, Chris, because there's nothing worse as we move closer to January the 1st, 2019, when we are all, we're all working with new rules with our right hand, but we're still operating in tournament golf the rules as we know them today in our left hand. So we've had a number of different situations, and Blaine Barber, bless his soul, he's a tremendous young man, and he's obviously going to be out here for many years playing on tour, and whatever reason, every time the kid has a ruling, it's one of those rules where, he gets penalized, but full well that in about 6 months' time, that rule's going away because, it's relatively innocuous, and it's one of those types of rules that we just want to just clean up, and is not fair. So I think any time you get a situation where you're penalizing a player and fundamentally it's not correct, but it is what it is, then I think that's where we start to get a little bit frustrated. But thankfully, with the enormous amounts of work that has been put in over the last 4 or 5 years through not just the USGA and the RNA, I think that's worth clarifying. I mean, obviously they are the governing body of our game and have done wonderful amounts of behind the scenes work with their various committees in making these transitions. But with the input of the various tours, the European Tour and our own PGA Tour rules staff, the ladies tour have been involved, as of the PGA of America. So those people who are working at the front end, doing it in a practical environment, have helped to ensure that the rules going forward are simple to understand, easy to navigate, and hopefully when people tune in on whenever they tune in on, whether it be online or whether it be on the broadcast, that they're not seeing people like me penalize a player for something silly and innocuous. So hopefully that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, it does. So the biggest rules issue I think that we all experienced, right, was the Phil Mickelson thing at the U.S. Open, right, hitting a rolling putt. And I was curious to get your thought. Have you ever seen anything like that through the course of your career, where a guy, whether Phil just was frustrated and hit it out of that, or sort of temporarily lost his mind, or he did it to bring attention to how fast and out of control the greens had gotten and burned out and all those sorts of things, and wanted to make a point to the USGA, whatever it was. Have you ever seen anyone sort of do something like that?
No, I haven't, not to that degree. I mean, I've seen clips of, I think Kirk Triplett did something similar to that somewhere on one of the US Open courses, maybe at Olympic, I think, but not to the degree that Phil did it. I think with Phil, I think, his love and desire of the US Open, and he's the only one he hasn't won. He's come so close. I think he went in there with great expectations. I think he genuinely liked the golf course. I just think that, as we all do, occasionally, I'm not trying to defend what he did, but I think he just became so frustrated with many things, not necessarily all to do with setup, maybe the standard of his play, etc., etc. I think he just had a total, momentary lapse of reason, and he ended up doing what he did, which was, unfortunate, really, to say the least.
So let's talk about some of these rules that are about to change. And one of the things that I'm finally glad to see is going away is the penalty for repairing a spike mark on the green. That one seems like one of those that's long overdue. What are your thoughts? Is this something that you guys have been talking about for years? Like, I can't believe this is a penalty, and now we finally are going to get to move on from it?
Yeah, I think we discussed this one quite, in length, because I think there was a couple of concerning points with regards to, okay, if we're going to allow this, what are we going to allow the player to fix? The obvious kickback was, if we do allow this, which quite frankly we were all keen because we were, as tour officials, we were somewhat boxed into a corner in the fact that the rule currently doesn't allow, it allows you to obviously repair pitch marks and old hole plugs on the green, but it doesn't allow you to repair other damage. Well, obviously the greens that we're playing on are so pure that, without too much difficulty, the groups behind can be left severely hampered with somebody who's just careless, for example, not necessarily someone who bangs a club on the ground and leaves an indentation mark there, for example, which again is another causes an issue from a rules of golf standpoint, but someone who just scuffs their foot. And, we're caught in a bit of a quandary as to players had a lovely shot in there to about 8 feet, the group behind has, and all of a sudden he's got to put through this just, huge amounts of a spike mark scuff. And, it's very, very frustrating for us when we've got to make a judgment call as to whether we would consider that to be, abnormal, or whether we would just have to just say, well, that's just part of the game and it's tough luck. So we were very keen for this to move forward. But we're obviously just concerned, a little bit about how long, if we did allow this to happen, how long it would take. But I think the general consensus is we're at a really good place, and to allow a player to just to repair, indentations and other, marks made by, the feet, etc., is a good thing. And hopefully, the putting surfaces for everybody will be better for those groups behind. So, but I think, the spin-off from that in terms of putting green, there's so many other things like, you couldn't touch your line of putt. And in doing so, you're playing with a partner and you can't touch a line of, you're pointing out a line for putting and you couldn't do that and you'd be penalized and all this simple sort of stuff that it was just really irrelevant. And we've really done a really good job of cleaning that stuff up as well. And then obviously moving a little bit further on to things like the flag stick, for example, on the putting green. That's, again, it's common sense. You and I are playing together. We both hit our ball, 60, 70 feet away from the flag on a similar location to the green. Well, one of us has got to walk all the way up and hold the flag in the current format, or you risk, having 2 shots for hitting the flag. Well, now, you and I, the chances of us hitting the flag is very slim. We may well not, to save time, we're just going to go ahead and putt with the flag in. And if it hits it, then, no penalty. Good luck. So I think there's a lot of good common sense changes with regards to the putting green.
Stephen, one more before I let you go. And you've been inside the ropes for so many years. What are some of the more amazing things that you've had a front row seat to watch as a rules official?
Oh dear, that's a good question, Chris. I think the thing for me is I'm never ceased to be amazed with the quality, the consistent quality of these guys who are playing in the current era, and obviously there's an awful lot of focus right now in terms of how far the golf ball is going, but this modern generation of player seems to me to be very, very dialed in terms of what they're doing out here. They're all working with their team. That team, back in the day used to probably just consist of, a caddy, but now it's very, very the modern day. They are athletes, golfers nowadays. I mean, they're very tuned. That they're using technology to the best of their knowledge, and they're taking that onto the golf course. So the standard of play that we're seeing week to week is just truly phenomenal, which for us who are setting up golf courses is challenging, because back in the day of having a 450-yard par 4, that was a good golf hole. But now, when you're flying at 300 and rolling out another 15 or 20, and these guys are flipping a little gap wedge in from 120. So the way we've gone about sort of changing our philosophy in terms of setting up golf courses has had to shift to still continually challenge these players, because there's not, out of 100, and we've got 70 players playing next week, and of those 70, any 70 could win, any 70 could shoot the lights out at any moment if they get their boots on. It's there's no passengers anymore, Chris. It's the standard and strength in depth across all of the tour. I know we're whittling down now in the Tour Championship. We've got 100 playing up here at the Dell Technologies Championship up in Boston. We've got 70, and then the next 30 go on to the Tour Championship. But I mean, on a regular week, when you got 156, the standard is just phenomenal. And I think that's the thing that really stands out for me. And you're dealing with, obviously when you're dealing with clubs, and this week is no different to Aronimink, they're obviously very proud of their golf course. And but I say to them, I said, hey, you're going to have 70 players, 70 of the best players in the world playing next week. If one of them's on, they're on. There's no stopping them. We're not going to trick it up. We're going to set it up as firm and as hard as we possibly can. But if they're on, there's no stopping them. It's a absolute pleasure, and I'm privileged to be, right at the front end, watching and working with these guys, and I'm blessed to do what I do. So it's an honor.
Well, Stephen, before we let you go, remind our listeners, how can they follow you guys, whether it's you or, the guys that you are working with? How can they stay up to date with all the things you guys are doing, whether it's online or it's over social media?
Well, we've PGA Tour Rules has got a Twitter handle. That's always a good little source of information for questions. If you, and particularly as we move forward with the new rules, just jump onto Twitter, PGA Tour Rules, and And far as a question, I mean, obviously we've got a lot of changes coming here in 2019, which are going to be a little bit tricky to digest for those of us who have been playing the game for a long time. So, and for that matter, if you see something on the broadcast which you have a question about, whether it be agronomically or anything to do with the competition of play, please reach out to us. We're a great bunch of guys, and we're more than happy to try and help educate our fans across the world. So don't hesitate to touch base on that front.
Well, Stephen, it's always a lot of fun having you as part of the show. I look forward to catching up with you when you guys are here for the Tour Championship in Atlanta in a couple of weeks, but I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of this show. It's always a thrill, my friend.
Chris, it's an absolute pleasure, and thanks for doing what you're doing. You're an awesome job.
I appreciate you, Stephen. Take care. All the best to you and your family. I look forward to catching up with you when you're here.
Thank you.
Take care, Stephen. That's Stephen Cox of the PGA Tour rules officials. And, we got a lot of rules changing, and it's fantastic stuff. It's so many of the things have been a long time coming. And I appreciate the fact that, Stephen has looked around, and those guys have looked around and say, you know what, hey, we need to go ahead and change some of these things because some of the things that we're doing are no longer really applicable in the game of golf. And that one about the spike marks and some of the other stuff. And I was really surprised to see that if you double hit a ball coming in January, it's no longer a two-stroke penalty, that there's no penalty for that. So I highly encourage you to go on the USGA site, take a look at all of the rules changes that are coming up, because there are a lot, and they are significant, but a lot of them, time has sort of come and gone for when that they were really applicable to be rules. And a lot of the things I'm sure you and me have both sort of looked at it in the rules of golf and said, shaking our head going, you know what? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I'm glad that most of those have now gone by the wayside. Can't wait for January. All right, before I get to my next guest, Lisa Vlooswyk, I want to give a shout-out to a couple of our sponsors. First, have I told you guys how excited I am about the new weapon that I have in my golf bag? For the last several months, I've been playing the new M4 driver from TaylorMade Golf. And if you haven't tried their new twist face technology, you're missing out. I don't know about you, but I don't hit it in the center of the face every single time. And after studying hundreds of thousands of swings from pros and amateurs like us, TaylorMade designed their new drivers to help protect us from our mishits and give us straighter distance. So whether your mishit is on the low heel or the high toe, Twist Face helps bring the ball back to center, keeping the distance that we want and finding more fairways. I'm hitting more fairways than I ever have, and the new drivers are the choice of some pretty good golfers that you might recognize. Twist Face is played by Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, Dustin Johnson, Jason Day, Jon Rahm, Justin Rose, to name just a few, and they are dominating the top 10 out on tour. If you haven't tried Twist Face, go hit it and get fit. It's in the new M3 and M4 drivers and only from TaylorMade. Also want to give a shout out to our friends over at Super Speed Golf. Now, used by over half the tour players in the world, Super Speed Golf is the fastest and most effective way to increase your swing speed. 3 8-minute training sessions per week are all you need to gain 5 to 10% more swing speed. With sets of, for golfers of all ages and over 1 year of included video instruction, Super Speed offers a complete solution to help you start bombing it off the tee. Go online to superspeedgolf.com and pick up your set today. And folks, this segment of the show is sponsored by our friends at the PGA Tour Superstore.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the PGA Tour Superstore. See why golfers everywhere are proud to call PGA Tour Superstore their golf pro shop. Visit them online at PGATourSuperstore.com. Now back to Chris and more of the show.
And now back with me on the French Lick Resort guest line is Lisa Longball Vlooswyk. Let me remind you a little bit about Lisa's background. She is now an 8-time Canadian long drive champion. She's a 15-time World Long Drive finalist, and she finished second in 2009 and 2011. She set the Canadian long drive record at 350 yards, 2 feet, 2 inches. She's the first woman to ever hit it over 350 yards in competition. She's also a wonderful keynote speaker and a golf entertainer, and I'm very excited that she is back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Lisa, thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, Chris, I'm absolutely honored. I've been looking forward to this all season.
I appreciate you. So, Lisa, it's been a little while since we got to have you as part of the show, so catch us up. What's been going on with you so far this year?
Oh, wow. You know, it's been super exciting. Since I was last on your show, I had just signed with Callaway Golf in a new endorsement deal at the time, which was pretty cool. But Chris, what was absolutely amazing, I received a call this past winter from Callaway Golf Apparel. So that's actually under the Perry Ellis brand. And they were doing a catalog shoot for their fall 2018 apparel line. And they said, Lisa, we'd love for you to be our cover model for that, for women. And so I was just blown away. So I was flown down to Dallas, and we did a photo shoot. They rented out the Dallas Cowboys golf course, and we were there for 12 hours, and we shot 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I think, holy cow, I think it was like 36 outfits. It was just absolutely unbelievable. And if you look at the current right now, the fall 2018 catalog, you'll see my image on the front. So again, just blown away, Chris, because here I'm a mom, you know, and it just shows that Callaway really believes in moms as athletes. And I again, just absolutely honored.
And to that end, Lisa, when we talked last time, you had just sort of switched over, to your point, from Nike to Callaway, and you had the Epic driver. So I'm curious, did you put the Rogue driver in play this year?
Oh, you bet I did. That became my gamer. And I have to tell you, it also has the jailbreak technology. And what I also saw in the rest of my bag, for the first time, the jailbreak technology in the Rogue line is in the Fairwoods and the hybrids. And Chris, it is unbelievable. I was playing with my husband a couple weekends ago, and I sometimes, you know, when I want to make sure I keep it in play and don't want to be laying 3 off the tee, I pulled out my fairway wood and I hit it 300 yards off the tee. And yes, I'm a long driver, but man, exactly, that's what I said. My husband literally paced it off because he's like, "Come on," you know. And so it was absolutely that jailbreak technology to me has been just fantastic. And although I love my Epic, the Rogue gives me that little bit more ball speed that I was looking for. And yeah, I put it into play right away. And for any of your listeners out there, again, they'll see huge gains as well in those fairways and hybrids.
So when you went from Nike to the Epic and now Epic to Rogue, how much more distance did you get in each one of those steps?
Oh boy, I would say I got, the first step would be, I saw at least kind of like a 10, 12 yard difference in the first one. And I'm looking at moving to the Rogue driver, another 8 yards, moving on. And again, in our sport, that's absolutely huge. You know, I lost the world title, in 2011. I came second in the world to Sandra Karlberg, our reigning world champion, by 3 yards. So, you know, again, it's those yards, those 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 yards, that's the difference between a world title and 10th place.
And Lisa, when you're out playing, like you mentioned a moment ago, with your husband, same driver that you use in competition, or is it different when you're in competition? Do you have a different settings, different shaft, that sort of thing?
Yeah, excellent question. You know what? I did. So I've done a few, like a Monday qualifier for the LPGA Tour, for the Canadian Women's Open. And when I switched back down to like a play style driver, which would be a 45-inch shaft. Of course, the USGA allows up to 48 inches. And of course, our World Long Drive Association always conforms. All our equipment is conforming. And when we check into any of our competitions, all our equipment is checked prior to competing. So I actually, tried to switch down to that 45, but you know, I've swung tens of thousands of times with my long drive club. So actually, when I play on a regular golf course, I use my 48-inch driver. I maybe take it down a little bit of a step, but I feel so much more comfortable and confident with that, and I'm hitting fairways. So I'm excited to I definitely put that long driver into play.
And Lisa, unfortunately, I read a post on social media regarding you not being able to defend the Canadian Long Drive Championship and compete in the World Long Drive Championship. You got a little rotator cuff injury going on? That's got to be heartbreaking.
Chris, when you say heartbreaking, literally tears. And, you know, maybe I should knock on wood because this was my first injury in 17 years of competing. You know, so maybe I should consider myself really lucky. But I was so proud that, you know, since we last spoke, I won my 8th Canadian long drive title just outside of Toronto. So super proud of that. And then I flew directly down to World Championships last year. I was top 5 in the world in 2016. Actually, for the first time, we had shut the Americans out because typically our Americans are some of our stiffest competition on the World Long Drive circuit. So that was just a first time for that, which was crazy. And then last year, I just started to feel the beginning of a rotator cuff problem, and it started to surface a little bit at World Championships. I had a top 10 finish, but I was definitely disappointed, you know, not placing top 5 as I had the year before. And then over the off season, I kind of rested it a little bit, came back to compete at the World Long Drive Tour. There's a tour stops for the World Long Drive Association. This year, the tour stops were in Mesquite, Nevada, Phoenix, Arizona, Tennessee, and Atlantic City, and of course culminating with our World Championships in Sackville, Oklahoma next week. But I went to the Phoenix event, and I really struggled. I felt a lot of pain after I competed. I had to stop hitting between sets. I couldn't even do up my seatbelt, taking my right arm and reaching across my body to do my seatbelt up in the car, or taking anything off over my head just really was a lot of pain, and I couldn't sleep on that side. So finally I realized I really needed to take care of it. So I've been going to physiotherapy, doing laser light therapy, active release therapy every single week, sometimes twice a week. And just recently, and that's been since May, just recently I've started to feel some gains and some improvement. And I'm back to, I'd say, about 80-85%. But when I consulted with my doctor, we just decided that if I go compete now, which means smashing buckets as hard as humanly possible, I'll probably regress, and it'll take me another 6 months to come back to where I am right now. And our first event of the year is going to be in probably April in Mesquite. So we decided that if I really want to have longevity in this career, I need to give it a rest this year. So unfortunately, I won't be going this weekend to defend my Canadian title, and I won't be competing at my first World Championship since 2001. So absolutely heartbreaking. But I am, Chris, I've now gotten to the point, you know what? I'm excited for 2019. I've already started my routine, my workout to kind of get myself prepared so I can be in the best shape possible for when that first tour event hits.
Lisa, switching gears a little bit, and you're such a wonderful ambassador of the game. And you do a wonderful job helping bring more women into the game, whether it's through being the Canadian lead for Women's Golf Day or all the clinics that you do. I'm curious, are more women starting to take the game up and keeping it as a game of a lifetime? How are you seeing participation amongst women?
Oh, another great question, Chris. I am seeing an increase. I have been so proud to be the Canadian lead on the Women's Golf Day initiative. The number of courses and countries that started to participate in Women's Golf Day this year just exploded exponentially. So it was so exciting. And even just, again, at golf courses, I'm starting to see more women out there, and I do a lot of corporate and charity golf tournaments as a golf entertainer. And before, it used to be 85% of attendees were men, and the women were back in the office doing the office work while the guys are doing the networking. And now I'm starting to see 75% of tournaments starting to be women, or even all foursomes of all women at some of these corporate and charity events. So I'm definitely seeing an increase. And I hope this is just a tradition that continues, because, Chris, I think a factor, at least in Canada, hopefully North America and abroad, would be little Brooke Henderson. Canadian Brooke Henderson, she had the weight of a nation on her this past weekend for the LPGA Tour event at the Canadian Women's Open, the CP Canadian Women's Open in Saskatchewan, and she brings home the title with a 4-stroke margin. She is the first Canadian to bring home the national title since 1973. So for her to do that, I think that when all these young girls are watching, she not only inspired young girls and women, but I think also golfers in general, when they see a story like that and they see, a young girl achieve so much success, I think it gets more people into the game and definitely more women into the game.
And Lisa, talking about the events that you do, and I was curious, and we talked a little bit about this last time, but I'm always curious, when you're out there playing in a Pro-Am or in a corporate event and you're teamed with, at least 2, maybe 3 other men in the foursome that you're playing in, what are the men like when you're playing? Are they humbled by the fact that you're smashing the ball out there 300 yards, or do egos get in the way and now all of a sudden they're trying to reach?
I used to get one of 2 responses. When I get up there, first of all, step up to the same tees that they're hitting from, and, they kind of do the double take. And then if I blast at 30, 40, 50 plus yards by them, then they either asking me a million questions and want to know about it, or they're kind of, I've had a few guys that kind of literally walk on the other side of the fairway and don't really want to talk that much, but usually it's the guys who are asking a million questions. But it's quite fun. It really is quite fun. It's so funny though. Often, again, my husband and I will go play, and we'll get paired with 2 guys. And I call it the look. The twosome comes up to me, the starter introduced us, that we're our playing partners, and they kind of roll their eyes like, oh, great, they got stuck with the chick, right? So it's kind of funny that, and then once we're on the first tee, usually the story changes a little bit, but, and again, that's always really humorous.
So Lisa, I got to get a couple of tips from you before we let you go. And obviously we're all searching for more distance. When you're doing one of your clinics, what are some of the mistakes that you see we amateurs do that is costing us yards?
Oh, two. I would say two in particular. One more for women would be. I would say that 80% of women can't hit it over 200 yards, and in my opinion, it's because women tend to be arms lifters versus turning their body. They don't create coil and torque. They're a little bit more flexible than their male counterparts, so they lift their arms. All they can do is drop their arms, and they'll hit it 150 yards straight down the pipe, but they'll never be any longer. So if you want to know if that's you, if you're one of the listeners, does your 8-iron go as far as your 7-iron, go as far as your 6-iron? If the answer is yes, you're an arm lifter. What I see from my guys, I see that my guys will make a good turn, but the problem is once they make this good turn, and that's what creates coil and torque, because of course, Chris, what leads to distance with any of your clubs, not just driver, is the ability to create club head speed and ball speed, and you need to have coil and torque in your swing, so guys will make a good turn, but where the guys make a mistake or a big power leak, when they get to the top of their backswing, their first move in their downswing is that back shoulder, because they're trying to muscle it and kill it, kill the golf ball, and that absolutely kills their distance because their upper body ends up outracing their lower body. Coil and torque is lost. Sometimes there's that big hard pull, and again, usually they're gripping it quite intensely as well. Like that's a big power leak. If you talk to any of the competitors at the World Long Drive Championships next week, they would tell you one of the biggest keys to more distance. Relax your grip pressure. Tension is a club head speed killer. So I recommend for all golfers that right before you do your takeaway, take a deep breath out, just a deep breath. Breathe out. By breathing out, that relaxes your tension in your forearms, your hands, and you become more supple and you will be able to gain more club head speed versus tense muscle.
And Lisa, you put a simple golf tip out on your Twitter feed about using foot spray to check club face impact point. Talk about that.
Yeah. That's the best $5 fix, Chris, that you'll get in your golf swing this summer. What you want to do is just go out and buy a can of foot spray. And then the reason you want to buy that is it's for impact. Because if you want to hit the ball longer, what's going to help you the fastest also hit it longer is center of face contact. I find if amateurs would look at where their ball pattern is, where they hit it on the club face, sometimes it's on the toes, sometimes it's heel, high face, low face. The more you're getting center of face contact, now you're maximizing your equipment and you will hit longer golf shots. So again, what you're going to do, you're going to get that can of foot spray. You're going to hold it about a foot, 2 feet away from the club face. And you can do this with any club face, driver, irons, fairway woods, hybrids. Give it a little spray, just a light mist so that it's coated lightly. You're going to take a swing. After you swing, take a peek at your club face and see where did you impact it. And if it's not center face, make a few more swings and adjustments till you get to that point. But it's also a great teacher in that, let's say you're hitting all your shots off the heel. Maybe you're standing too close to the ball. Maybe you're hitting all your shots off the toe. Perhaps you're standing too far away from it. So again, it's a quick little lesson and really helps you quickly find the center of the club face and again, get more yardage.
Lisa, let our listeners know where are you going to be speaking this winter? What have you got coming up where our listeners can go and find you?
Oh, Chris, I'm super excited. I just opened, so I've been doing for 5 years, I've run a golf school in the United States, for women. It's a 3-day golf school. I've done it in Phoenix and Las Vegas. And so I'm going to continue to do one in Phoenix, March 7th to 10th, 2019. But I've added one in Orlando. I had so many girls on the East Coast of the United States, a lot of New Yorkers and, even the Midwest, kind of the Chicago area and Atlanta. A lot of ladies saying, gosh, Lisa, I'd love to come out to your school. So this year I added an Orlando school. So, February 21st to 24th, I'm doing a golf school in Orlando, Florida. Can't wait. And it's my first one again on the eastern side of the country. So would love to see anyone. And again, if they want any information on that, they can definitely check that out at my website, which is www.lisalongball.com under schools.
And Lisa, how about on social media? How can we keep track of all the great things you're doing on social media?
Oh, well, you know what? I would love to connect with audience members, especially if they have any questions or just want to share anything with me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Lisa Longball because if I was Lisa Vlooswyk, no one would be able to spell it or find me. So I'm at Lisa Longball, Twitter and Instagram. And on Facebook, add me as a friend. I've got a page, but feel free to add me as a friend. I'm Lisa Longball Vlooswyk. So again, I'd love to have a back and forth conversation with people. So welcome people on social media and I sure enjoy following your social media, Chris. You are so positive out there in the golf world and always have your finger on the pulse of what's going on, but always promoting people so positively. So thank you for what you do to give back to this sport, Chris.
I appreciate you very much, Lisa. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night. It's always fun having you as part of the show. I hope you'll come back soon, share more of your stories, your insights, and let us know all the great things you're doing because you're fantastic, Lisa.
I can't wait, Chris. And again, I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Take care, Lisa. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you. You as well, Chris.
That is Lisa Longball Vlooswyk, and again, check her out online at lisalongball.com, and then follow her on Twitter and Instagram. Great stuff. She's always doing something, whether it's a clinic or, like I say, what a wonderful ambassador she is, and being the Canadian lead for Women's Golf Day, promoting the game, attracting more and more women, young girls to the sport, which we obviously need. She is absolutely amazing and doing great things, and hopefully she gets that rotator cuff healed up and she can get back out there and get in these long drive contests again. But what a wonderful human being. Look forward to having her back soon. All right, now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is world-renowned golf club designer Jesse Ortiz. And let me remind you a little bit about Jesse's background. He received his Bachelor of Science degree from the University of San Francisco, got his start in club making back in 1967. As a teenager, he helped his parents and his sister in their family-run golf business, which you've heard of, Olimar Golf. And Olimar started as a persimmon, woods company, making woods for legends like Johnny Miller, Tony Lehman, Ken Venturi, to name just a few. Jesse took them to the next level with his innovative tri-metal fairway wood design, which was one of the most successful and largest televised ad campaigns in golf history at the time. His tri-metal fairway woods took the company from a $1.5 million company in sales in 1997 to $70 million in 98 to $105 million in 99. And that year, Jesse received the International Network of Golf Business Achievement Award and was recognized as the Entrepreneur of the Year for Northern California by Ernst & Young. Jesse left Olimar in 2003 and moved over to the Bobby Jones Golf Equipment Company, which you guys know for years we were promoting. And his 2006 line of fairway woods and utility clubs were Golf Digest Hot List back in 2006. And he collected a lot of acclaim in that magazine for that season. And I can tell you, from the Bobby Jones fairway woods and hybrids are awesome, because I still play Jesse's 3-wood and hybrid designs. And I'm telling you, they're the best and easiest, hitting fairway woods that I have ever played. And I can't thank Jesse enough for taking time out of his night to come back and be a part of the show. Hey, Jesse, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Chris. Thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
So, Jesse, I wanted to go back, and for our listeners who weren't with us last time, and it's been a little while since we had the opportunity to have you on the show, but go back to the beginnings, your beginnings in the golf industry and your family's business, and how the Olimar brand came to be.
Wow. So it's a long time ago. like you said, Chris, I retired at the end of this past year because I figured 50 years in the business was long enough. But yeah, I grew up in the business. My dad was a tool and die maker from the old country, from the Basque Country in Spain, and got interested. A friend of his got him interested in golf clubs. I always said that my dad was probably the only man in the history of the game of golf to make the clubs and not play the game. I mean, he didn't take up the game until about 5 or 6 years after he started Olimar in 1960. So, I started in the family business. I guess you could say I was drafted in typical old European style family tradition. If you're able-bodied, you are drafted into working for the family company. So that's how I got into the golf business. At first, putting on grips, and then grinding some clubs. And by the time I was about 15, 16, my dad trusted me enough to be able to work on the bulge and roll and on the grinding for the top amateurs and the tour professionals that would come by San Francisco every year to play in the tournament. There used to be a PGA stop called the Lucky International, put on by the Lucky Brewing Company in San Francisco. So the pros, the tour would always stop in San Francisco, and that's how I got to know people like Tom Weiskopf, and Johnny Miller was a local junior. He used to pick me up at my golf lessons and bring me back to the shop on Saturdays. Tony Lehman, I remember him coming to the shop. I worked closely with Ken Venturi, and Ken stayed really he was a huge supporter of mine and of the family's up until, he passed away. He was with me even during the Orlamar days, and he was there with me at Bobby Jones. So that's how I started in the business, making persimmon woods for the top players in the game in the 60s and 70s, and then in the 90s everything went to metal. In the 80s and 90s everything went to metal, and I finally told my dad, look, we can't beat these guys, we got to join them. We got to make a metal wood, but let's make one that's got the weighting characteristics of a wood. And that's how the first multi-material metal wood in golf came to be in 1998. It's been 20 years now, Chris, and I look at what the other manufacturers are doing today, and every one of them has their fairway woods, and their hybrids are all built on the tri-metal platform that I created and designed 20 years ago. So that's kind of a run through of what got me into the golf business, how I did tri-metal, and then went on to do Bobby Jones.
So Jesse, where did the inspiration? Where did that the low profile, the Olimar low profile 3 and 4 wood? I mean, I had those back in the day, and I thought they were genius in that it seems like for most of us, hitting a 3 wood off the fairway is a tough shot. Right? We're either chunking it, or we're looking up, or we're topping it, or that sort of thing. But with the low profiles, it seemed like, at least for me, maybe it was just a mental thing, but I had more confidence that I could get that through the fairway and get the ball up in the air because of the low profile piece. Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, my dad and I were very well known for our fairway woods. Even though we had a lot of the tour guys using our drivers, our fairway woods actually among top amateurs and tour pros were really a lot more popular. And my dad had put in a very thick brass sole plate on the bottom of the persimmon woods, and we always shaped our woods a little bit on the shallower side, because that way when you address the ball, the weight is lower. It also makes the ball look like it's slightly teed up when you have a shallower face. So that's we were making wood in that similar style. What happened, Chris, is that, and it's common in the golf industry, is someone comes out with something that's hot and everyone copies it. All the manufacturers then flock to that. They're like lemmings. They're all flocking to the edge of the cliff. And what happened is woods got bigger. With Callaway coming out with Big Bertha, all of a sudden everyone started coming out with bigger-headed drivers. Well, gee, if a big-headed driver makes sense, a bigger-headed fairway wood must make sense. Well, so all the manufacturers went to bigger-headed fairway woods. They even came out with titanium fairway woods. You may remember that back in the late 90s, titanium fairway woods were getting popular. And it was really just a ruse for the major manufacturers to get more money out of each unit that they could sell, because the only thing that titanium helps you achieve is a larger head, which makes sense on a driver because the ball's on a tee. But once the ball's in play, as you know, Chris, the ball's on the ground. You need something that sits low behind the ball so it's easier to get airborne. And so the whole move with tri-metal was not only the shallowness of the club, which was going against what everyone else was doing. Everyone else was going big. I think Barney Adams and I were the only guys that were making shallower fairway woods. But we took it one step further by making the tri-metal a club made out of different materials. Until then, everything was either a titanium head or it was a stainless steel head. But I knew that there were steel alloys out there much stronger than stainless steel. And if I could get that metal and put it on the face of the club, I could make the face much thinner and then put a lot more weight down in the sole. All the manufacturers were talking about perimeter weighting, and I knew from my wood days that sole weighting is what you needed to have a fairway wood perform. And so we went from a 4 millimeter face thickness in stainless steel, we went to 1.8 millimeters. It was a drastic change, and probably that's probably the last major technological advancement in golf equipment in the past 20, 30 years. I mean, everything since tri-metal has been just kind of tweaking of hosels and face angles and things like that. But the last real material change in golf club design was the tri-metal 20 years ago. So it kind of shows you, that we've really somewhat stagnated. Innovation has been stifled in the last 20 years.
And Jesse, when you moved over to the Bobby Jones Company, you innovated the club head design even more, making it a little more round, on the heel and the toe, making it a little easier to hit the ball out of the rough. Talk about what led to that change.
Well, we've always had a sole that was more curved or rounded than the other manufacturers, Chris. And the reason is the more rounded or contoured sole lets you hit the ball out of all kinds of lies. And particularly with the hybrid clubs. Hybrids came into being, and originally, Chris, they were designed to be like fat 1-irons or 2-irons, okay? Because the guys on the tour pros, were having trouble hitting 1-irons and 2-irons. So the first hybrids that actually came from Japan, the whole hybrid craze started in Japan, came here as fat, sausage-like 1 and 2-irons. Then the manufacturers saw that hybrids were a hot item, and so they started making these long-nosed, kind of sausage-shaped clubs that they called hybrids, with very flat leading edges, straight soles, very much like an iron. I knew because of from my experience with tri-metal, because we were making tri-metals up until up to 40 degrees loft. We were making tri-metals to replace 7 and 8 irons. So I was ahead of all the hybrid stuff, because I was already making these high lofted clubs. But with the hybrids, what I decided to do was make a club with a very rounded leading edge, very contoured sole, and make the body wide to make them almost like cleats from 150 years ago, very much like miniature, wide-bodied fairway woods. And I remember when I first came out with the hybrids, the Golf Digest people said, Jesse, we put you in we put you in the hot list. You're a gold medal winner, but we didn't pick you as the number one hybrid because it didn't look like all the other hybrids that we tested. Even though you won 2 of the 5 categories, best performance and best appearance, we couldn't give you the gold medal because your hybrid doesn't look like all the other hybrids. So we really didn't know how to categorize it. And I remember telling Statura and Michael Johnson, I said, guys, in 3 to 5 years, every manufacturer is going to have their hybrid look a lot like this and nothing like what they're putting out now. And sure enough, 3 years later, everyone had copied pretty much the Bobby Jones hybrid design. So I knew, Chris, that the average golfer needed a club that he could hit out of all kinds of trouble, because he uses the hybrid as his miracle club. On the tour, the pros used the hybrid really as a replacement for a 1 or a 2-iron, or sometimes like a 3. But the average golfer needed a club that he could hit out of anywhere off the fairway, because he would rely on that style of club to get them out of trouble, regardless of whether it was a 19-degree loft or a 21 or even a 35, which I made up to 35 degrees. So I always designed clubs, Chris, to appeal in looks to the tour pro, but have all the features and benefits to help the guy who's trying to break 100. That's what I've done my whole career.
And Jesse, and I mean this is sincerely, not just because you're on the show, because I've had every major manufacturer, on the show, somebody from those organizations. But I thought you did the best job with the Olimar piece, with the low profile. Like I said, I played the 3 and the 4 wood that you designed there. I think the Bobby Jones fairway woods, the 3 wood is the best 3 wood I've ever hit. Your hybrids are the best hybrids I've ever hit. So I'm curious. I mean, yeah, back in the mid 2000s, Golf Magazine was giving you gold stars and all that sort of stuff. But I'm at a loss. I miss you being out there and the Bobby Jones equipment coming out with something new and great every year. And I understand you've been in the business for 50 years and it kind of time to call it a career. But the things that you did were so innovative and they were so good, and I think they're going to last, last for years to come. I don't think anyone's going to catch you. So I'm curious. Are people knocking on your door, calling your phone, trying to get you to do more? What's the status of what you're doing now?
Well, I've always been kind of a loner. I'm up here in Northern California. Obviously, if I was down in the Carlsbad, Southern California area, I probably would have, I probably would have gotten offers. I got a little bit of interest at first, but I never wanted to go back down to Southern California. I did that at the end of Olimar. I spent 3 years there, and I lost the last 3 years of my daughter's high school years. I commuted, and I've always worked for myself. And it was just time. It was just time, Chris. I was trying to, I had some issues with the Golf Channel on advertising policies because they had gotten some flack about me buying too many remnant ads, and I was getting too much exposure for not enough money, and some of the major manufacturers were a little upset about that and made it known. And then one of my partners, Stevie Abram, passed away, had a massive heart attack at the age of 56 and died. This was in December. And so looking at the whole industry, looking at my partner, losing my partner at the age of 56, and he was otherwise healthy, the issues with advertising and all that. And I just thought, what, it's time. It's time to do a little traveling. And I've worked now on my apartment buildings. I have real estate holdings in San Francisco that keep me very busy. And so I just thought, what, it's time to step aside. I still have ideas. I still have things that I would have liked to have done, but I'm finding that there's plenty of life outside of golf, Chris, and I'm having a great time. And really, honestly, I don't miss a lot. I miss, the interviews. I miss sometimes, going to the shows and running into people that I've known for 50 years and all that. But I don't miss the hype. I don't miss the baloney. I don't miss the who's going to be ripping off my designs. Do I have to go to court and fight someone? I mean, it's such a litigious industry also. And I just, when that fire ends inside and you just say, what, I don't need this anymore. I'm going to go do something else. It was just time. It was just time. And, sometimes I miss it, but most of the time I don't, Chris, honestly. I love playing. And, in the week after next, I go for the 39th year in a row with my 3 best friends. We go up to the Sierra Nevadas up there, in the Reno, Lake Tahoe area, and we play a bunch of fabulous courses. We play 7 rounds in 7 days. I get to see my buddies Tommy Duncan up at Wolf Run and at Lake Ridge. He owns those 2 courses. And then my good buddy Louis Gurin, who runs Genoa Lakes, the 2 courses out there. It's great courses in the Sierra Nevada. So I get out there, I go with my 3 best friends, and we just shut the world out and try not to 3-putt too many of those mountain courses and enjoy hitting 7 irons 160 yards because you're at 7,000 feet. That kind of stuff. That's what, but I appreciate your comments. And and because I did take a lot of pride over the years to do innovative designs, Chris, and not look at what everyone else was doing, but just follow what I thought was best for the average golfer and for good players. And I feel that I have made some significant contributions to the industry. And it's a little sad, but then, again, I'm happy doing what I'm doing now. I really am.
Well, it was all fantastic stuff, Jesse, and I mean that sincerely. So, we ever get the itch, like even just for yourself, go into your shop or something. I imagine you got a shop somewhere that you can tinker around and maybe make something here or there, do a little something, and get out with your buddies, and they look and go, "Hey, what's that?" Hey, never mind what that is. You don't need to know what that is.
No, I did a sole design late last year on a wedge that I thought was absolutely fabulous. I was working on it. It was a very unusual shape of a sole that on a wedge that really was like picking the ball up out of heavy rough or out of a sand trap and tossing it. I mean, no matter all you had to do is square the leading edge to the target, and the ball would pop out. I mean, because there's just nothing like it, the way the sole design that I did. And then we were testing it out, and about a month later, that's when my partner I talked to him on a Friday, and on Tuesday, I get a call from his brother, and he says, "Jesse, Stevie passed away." And it shocked me. It hit me, and I started looking around at my life and saying, I think there's a lot of things that I want to do. I really should. I got the properties in the city that need some loving care, even though we have managers that manage the places. It needed my attention more. And I thought, what, maybe I should just at least take a hiatus now. And so that's really the thought at the end of last year was, hey, I'm going to take a year off just to see what happens. But I'm having such a good time doing things, Chris, that are not golf related, that sometimes I find myself, I'm so busy now doing stuff. How did I ever find time to work on clubs? I mean, it's funny, but I'm enjoying my time here on the sidelines. Let's put it that way.
Well, Jesse, I hope at some point, if you decide to do something with that wedge, because as a guy who struggles getting out of the sand, I would sure love to see what that is like. So if that itch ever comes back, I hope you'll let me know, because I'd love to take a look at it, promote what you're doing. I'm a huge fan of yours. I think everything you've done to this point in your career, over the course of your career, has been the best in the industry, and I'm sure that wedge would be no different.
Well, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and your kind words. I appreciate it, really do. Thank you.
Well, Jesse, take care. All the best to you and your family. I hope we get the opportunity to spend some time with you again soon, because I know you've got tons of stories about the things that you've done over the course of your career, and I'd love to hear every one of them. So hopefully you'll come back and join me again sometime soon.
Anytime, Chris. Just let me know, and just give me a couple topics, and I'll be happy to give you some stories. Really, stay in touch.
I appreciate it very much, Jesse. Take care.
All right.
All the best to you and your family. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks again, Chris. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, Jesse. That's the great Jesse Ortiz. And folks, and I promise you, it is with nothing more than sincere, gratitude for the things that he has done over the course of his career. I had the Olimar, like I said, I had the 3 and the 4. I thought they were awesome. I think just as he talked about, with that low profile face, it did give you the appearance that the ball was teed up a little bit. And I think that gives you a mental confidence to swing at it and not do some of the things that we do when we're hitting 3-woods off the deck now, right? You tend to overswing a little bit, you chunk it, you top it, you do all those sorts of things. Well, that were outstanding. And then he went over to the Bobby Jones Company, and I've got in my bag. I've got the 3-wood, and I've got the 3 and the 4 hybrid. And, they're sort of my go-to clubs. I think they're easy to hit. I think the ball flies straight, and it flies straight and long. And if you happen to be in a little bit of light rough, cuts right through it. So, the idea of that wedge, if he's got something that can make it nice and toss it right out of the sand, I think we could all use that. So I think we all should be rooting for that he gets the itch at some point before too long to make those things a reality for all of us. All right, folks, it's time for me to put a bow on this episode of Next on the Tee. I want to send out my sincere thanks again to Stephen Cox, Lisa Vlooswyk, and Jesse Ortiz for joining me tonight. Please give me your thoughts. Go online. Check us out on Facebook, Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro. Give me your feedback there. Plus, like I say, if you've got a question for one of our previous guests, one of our future guests, please let me know. I'll be glad to get those questions out to them and get the answer for you and pass that back to you. You can see who some of our future guests are going to be by going online to our website, nextonthetee.net. Please also check out our sister show on the football side, Thursday Night Tailgate, getting revved up, right? The NFL season right around the corner. My co-host Bob Lazari, our announcer Joe LaGianusa. That show airs live every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can stream it live by going to Blog Talk Radio, or that show, like this one, is also available as a free podcast over on iHeartRadio, Podbean, and Audio Boom. On Thursday Night Tailgate, we are joined every week by 5 NFL legends who share their stories from their playing days, plus give us their insights into what's going on around the league today. Plus, we also do our Spotlight on the Positive segment. We always hear the negative news, right? All the bad things that players might be doing, the arrests that happen, that sort of thing. Well, you know what? We kind of flip that around, and we do our Spotlight on the Positive segment, and we highlight 2 players that are doing great things every week out there in their communities. So check out that segment as well. You can find that show online at ThursdayNightTailgate.com. And again, this one, nextonthetee.net, to stream or download any of our archive episodes for free. Folks, thanks again for choosing to listen to this show tonight. We really appreciate the fact that you are making this show part of your podcast consumption. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.
You've been listening to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA pros and top instructors and media members go to tell their stories. Join us the same time every Tuesday to hear more stories about the game we love from people who love sharing those stories with you. It's all about the great game of golf. It's all about the great game of golf.